Hyundai has just made a mega announcement that it will launch 6 electric vehicles by 2028. So Hyundai rushing into the EV race, a bit of a late starter, but again, they're going to be catching up. And that's a lot of models by 2028, where the market, according to Hyundai's estimates, is going to be 1.7 lakh EVs. And obviously, Hyundai wants to grab a big chunk of that market and have a strong market share by then. And talking to me about this and Hyundai's EV plans, or Hyundai Motors EV plans, is the Director for Sales, Service and Marketing of Hyundai Motor India, Tarun Garg. Tarun, thanks for joining us. Firstly, quite a mega announcement, and I think it's inevitable. Everyone has to join the EV race. But just my one question, do you think you all are a bit of a late starter? I know you have the Kona EV, but if you look at it in terms of market share, very small market share in the current EV scenario. So question is, being a late starter, is that a bit of a disadvantage?
So thank you, Hormazd, at the outset. And yes, today is a significant day when we have said that we are going to expand our battery EV portfolio to 6 by 2028. So we are all very excited. And I will like to differ from you when you say that we're a late starter. In 2019, when we launched the Kona, the EVs were only being talked about. And here we launched a product which was not only SUV body type, which was the flavor of the season, but with a range of 450 kilometers. We had some innovations like giving a free EV charger with every Kona. We had a partnership with our dealers in terms of EV charging stations. So I think we made some good experiments, and we were able to get some very good customer feedback. And here we are now ready and charged up, as they say, to really announce that, yes, by 2028, we would have expanded our portfolio to 6.
Right. No, what I meant is, is that your market share currently in EVs is not very high. So, do you think that's, I just want to press on this. Do you think that's a bit of a disadvantage in terms of getting data? Obviously, some competitors have now got, as much as a 70% market share. So obviously, there's, I guess there is a lag, but what's interesting is that there's an absolute focus and commitment. So just want to get a sense, what are you looking at in terms of market share? I know you may not want to project that, 2028 is far away, but is your endeavor to be the number one EV player in India by then?
So look, I would not really get into number one EV player or not, but I would like to mention a few facts here which are very important. One is that, of course, currently, if you say the market is probably less than 0.5%, when I talk about the EV space. So a market share there or a market leadership there, I mean, you have to see it from that perspective. So right. What is more important is that how critical a role you are playing in terms of going ahead. So I believe that today's announcement is a very, very significant one when a player which is global as well as Indian and really, really making this kind of an announcement. So that is one. The two is when we talk about EVs, very significant part of it is about the platforms that we have also announced today. That one is that eGMP platform, which is the Electric Global Modular Platform, which is a Hyundai Motor Group's platform, which is very unique. Why I say that? Because not only in terms of it is very, very scalable, in terms of wheelbase, you can have different body type, you can have even different length, different width. Also, because the HVAC is pushed inside the engine compartment, which means you have a much better interior space, you have flexibility of seating, you have those flat floor, you have a slim cockpit. In terms of performance, you have a top speed of 260 kilometers an hour. When you talk about the range, we can go up to 800 kilometers, mind you. So in terms of reliability, you have a ultra high sense steel, you have a low center of gravity. I think a very, very significant, because when we talk of EVs, we are also talking about the Hyundai quality. And that is where I believe this is significant. The second aspect of it is that we have also announced that some of the IC derived EVs are also going to come. BEVs are also going to come. So, probably when I say 6, maybe 3 would be eGMP and probably 3 would be, IC derived BEVs. So, that is the second aspect. The third aspect is that even for a mass market EV, we have also said that we are going to have a range, of 350 kilometers. So that is also significant. And I believe that as Hyundai, as you know, that our brand campaign of Beyond Mobility. Sustainability is a very key pillar, and innovation is a very key pillar. And of course, intelligent technology is a key pillar. I believe today's announcement is in sync with that brand thought of Beyond Mobility. And going forward, we'll continue to excite the market with EV products as we have announced today.
No, Tarun, completely agree with you. Very, very big announcement. I mean, it kind of shows that you've thrown down the gauntlet. It's a lot of EVs to come by then. Obviously, I'm sure, there's going to be, as you said, certain EV platforms like your eGMP platform is quite modular. So you said 3+3. So is it fair to assume that with the eGMP platform, which is a global platform, it's largely by Indian standards, largely for the large products? You've got the Ioniq 5 on that. You showed a 7-seater concept at the Los Angeles Motor Show. So it looks like you will be having the high end of your EV range on eGMP, but the low range will be on the IC derived platform, because that's the way you can manage certain costs. And obviously, a lot of commonality with the current ICE car. So is that fair to assume that the mass vehicles will be on IC platforms and the top end will be there on eGMP?
So while I cannot divulge too much of details at this point of time, but I think you are in the right direction broadly, as I said, because the range, the performance, the power, all those things very clearly eGMP is like more of a premium kind of a platform. And also the localization levels, especially in the initial few years, is going to be low. So that is going to be a challenge in terms of managing the cost. So you're right. And that is where the derived IC platform also becomes very important, where we already have some localization, some volumes, in terms of petrol, diesel, turbo, etc. So I think it will be both. Going forward, that will be a good advantage to have a good mix of both, and both will serve their own purpose.
You said petrol, diesel, turbo. So I can assume that we can rule out the Santro platform. It would be something a little bit higher, because you've got certain platforms. Typically a good candidate could be the Grand i10 Neos platform for a vehicle like this. Obviously, you have a completely bespoke body style. So have you identified which platform you are going to select for the, let's say, EV derived from an IC?
So as you would know that as of now, what we have announced is, in terms of body types, we are going to look at SUVs, CUVs, and sedans. Now, why? Now, second question could be why say SUVs? I think it's probably a no-brainer, because when you see the market, the trends very clearly, I mean, if I talk about, say, 2021, 37% of the market is SUVs, which was only about 15-16 in 2016. So very clearly the flavor is SUVs. Also, we have seen that the customer preference is very clearly toward SUVs. So that will become a very significant part as far as body type is concerned for BEVs. That said, we are not discounting any other thing. We'll see what is the market feedback. The advantage of a eGMP platform is that we can really, adapt. We can be very flexible, like I already mentioned. So there is a lot of flexibility and room, but we have to be very, very practical and see what is it the Indian customer is really looking for, even when he's looking for an EV. Because sometimes we tend to assume just because it is an EV means the customer will not want space, maybe he will not want features. I don't think that's such a right assumption to make, because customer would want, would not want to really compromise on some of these basic hygienes, which he is now getting used to.
Right. And also, I think one advantage of the SUV is that it has a ground clearance. I think EVs have ground clearance challenges. We've seen that because the battery sits low in the floor. And ground clearance can get compromised. So has that also come into that? SUVs are also, from a practical point of view, takes care of the ground clearance issues which typically EVs face?
Look, I think SUVs probably are taking care of a lot of things, and I would say that probably this is where it appears that the trends are. That said, as you know, we are a very significant player in hatches and sedans as well. And that is why we have also announced that we are going to have a sedan as well when we are talking about EVs.
Right. So, Tarun, just a last few questions, basically on the market itself and your, projection of it. You've talked about, as we said earlier, 1.75 lakh EVs by 2028. One could even assume that's quite conservative by then. Do you think that number could be revised, obviously going upward, because things like fuel prices have suddenly driven demand for EVs. These things could happen. On the flip side, some certain subsidies could be taken away. So must be pretty hard to predict, going forward. And obviously, this is going to be constantly revised. So just your thought on, what the market is going to look like, because clearly 7 years down, it's pretty hard to predict.
Yeah, you have actually answered your own question. Very hard to predict. And this number which we have given, it is actually an IHS, I think, 7th month of 21 survey, and they have also been revising their numbers. So we don't know actually how it is going to be, but there has to be some base case, and which says that the market would be EV market would be 175,000 in 28, but we don't know. So we are, of course, for us. Your next question could be, what would be the volume target? Again, very difficult to answer. Of course, when we talk about mass market EV, obviously we will be looking at volumes. But I think probably an internal benchmark, and mind you, it is internal benchmark, could be that in any segment where we are present with BEVs, we should have a market share which should be higher than what we are having in the same segment in the IC space. I think that should whet your appetite and answer your question as well.
Right. So, I mean, you are, I would say, a distant but strong number two in IC vehicles. So what you're looking at is, with a clean sheet of paper, when the EV race starts, has started, you want a larger market share. I know you're not saying it, but I'm sure, knowing how aggressive the Hyundai group is, I'm sure you would be looking at maybe even leadership in this. But, just one last question, we talk on mass EVs. Clearly, that's where the market is. We've seen that. I mean, it's the strategy to go with IC derived platforms is right, but still the supply chain is not fully developed. Are you making any assumptions on the supply chain? Localization is still a challenge right now, where even the basics are really being imported. And there's just a lot of assembly of the battery packs over here. I mean, we still have to import cells. Are your assumptions based on, let's say, localization automatically going higher in the next 7 years?
Yeah. I think that's a very, very key issue which you have brought to the table, Hormazd. And so let me tell you that we are in talks with, various global vendors, both in terms of battery and the other components as well, because localization is the key to affordability, and affordability is the key to volumes. So I think it's a chicken and egg story, but we know we have to play a role there, and we are in talks. So at the opportune moment, we'll be announcing, what kind of what are our plans in that area. But you're right, you're spot on that it's a big challenge, because as of now, the cost of producing a BEV is obviously much higher than, say, a petrol or a diesel. So that gap has to be really plugged, and a lot of effort will need to be done on that count. And let me say that government is doing its bit with all kinds of schemes coming up, and I'm sure we will get clarity as we move forward. How many players are joining and what kind of opportunities exist in terms of really joining that ecosystem as well.
Right. And last question, Tarun. Taking off from here, for mass adoption, what do you think finally is going to be that one single trigger? Because let's face it, by 2028, I think technology will take care of range. You mentioned about 70,000 charging points. So, that infra should be in place. Is it then finally price and running costs? Because that really, in India, given the sensitivity to affordability, do you think that's the one trigger that needs to be fired, or that one hurdle that needs to be overcome for this sudden tipping point to happen?
No doubt about it, Hormazd. Today we see that there are early adopters which are buying EVs. They want to be seen as people who are contributing to the environment, contributing to the society, looking at the future. So a green number plate is a matter of great self-esteem, and also a kind of you want to be seen and noticed. At the same time, when you talk about mass adoption, a person is looking at probably first-time buyers, looking at total cost of ownership. So all those things are going to make a very important difference. And that is where I believe that localization and accordingly affordability probably is going to be that trigger which is going to really make this shift towards electric mobility. That said, I believe we are still at, if you see even globally, today the penetration is 5% globally, I believe. In India, the penetration is less than 0.5%. So I think we have a long way to go. And next few years, obviously, IC and EVs are going to coexist. But as things move, I'm sure the market will slowly but surely, move towards electric vehicles.
Tarun Garg, thank you very much for talking to us. Really a big announcement from Hyundai Motor India. 6 EVs by 2028. That's quite a statement in your push towards green mobility and also going in the EV space. Wish you all the best and thanks for talking to us.
Thank you, Hormazd. Always a pleasure. Thank you.